This is the Golden Rule Podcast, where the host is always right, even if he doesn't know what he's talking about, which, on this show, is all the time because we don't tell him the topics beforehand. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 5 of the Golden Rule Podcast. I'm your host, Ezekiel Spragg, or Zeke Spragg, probably what most people call me. This is the only podcast where the host is always right, even though he has no idea what he's talking about, as so eloquently put in our intro. And that's because every single week, my co-hosts and producers, Paul Barnett and Rob Yates, come up with a question or a topic of conversation, do all their research, come up with all their notes and talking points they want to talk about throughout the episode, but they don't let me have any idea what we're talking about. I'm just coming in with 34, almost 35 years of life experience.
Is that what you call it?
It's something. It's experience. I don't know if it's good or bad experience. It depends on the time, I guess, of my life that I have to work back towards. And that's where the idea of this podcast came from, to give me no idea, because I always thought I was right in a lot of situations, especially arguments we'd have back in the day. One in particular that made me say for the first time the golden rule is I'm always right is 4th and 26, the Eagles versus the Green Bay Packers. I knew it happened in Lincoln Financial Field. Paul, on the other hand, thought it happened in Lambeau. I was right. So after that, I said, golden rule, Paul, I am always right. And that's where the idea for this podcast came from.
And he's always been right ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, obviously. Always right. I say that with conjecture now, but it's sad because about 10 years ago, especially when it came to sports, I definitely thought I was always right. So, episode 5, we've already had 4 entertaining episodes that range from robots to man-thongs. And then everything in between. Wow, thongs, everything in between. All right. What do we have for us to talk about today? I believe, Rob, it is your turn to ask.
It is my turn. You ready? You ready for this?
I love how you guys always ask me, are you ready? It's
did you prepare?
How much readiness I have for these podcasts.
Okay, Zeke, here we go. Zeke, is murder always wrong?
Oh, my God. Like, you guys have no idea how my brain has to go through these topics. We've had light topics like sandwiches and man-thongs, which man-thongs was like a funny topic.
I don't know. It's pretty serious to some people.
I mean, sandwiches and man-thongs, that sounds like a podcast on its own.
Look forward to our spin-off podcast coming soon.
The thong between the buns. Here we go. All right. I'm glad we're starting this off on a light note because we're talking about murder. Like,
what kind of sandwich you looking for?
Like, you guys have to understand, I don't come into this podcast with a certain mindset because I don't know what it's ever going to be. So, like, when you guys catch me off guard with something as funny as, or entertaining, I guess,
as murder?
Yeah. And then as serious as murder is, like, brutal. All right, so before I give you my opinion, because I think we need to qualify something. Murder and killing are different. So do you...
Starting with a great point. Yeah, go on.
Can someone bring up the definition of the exact word of murder? Because murder in my mind and killing are different. And that can be the title of this episode if you really want it to be.
The killing of another person without justification or excuse. Especially the crime of killing a person with malice aforethought or with recklessness manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life.
So by that definition, murder is never right.
Well, we'll get there.
But in that definition... murder is never right because it said it was killing without. Can you read it one more time? So
the killing of another person without justification or
without
excuse.
justification or excuse.
There's also some other like an instance
though.
of such killing, something that is very uncomfortable, difficult, or hazardous.
No, read the last
murder.
Read the last part of that definition.
The killing of another person without justification or excuse, especially the crime of killing a person with malice aforethought or with recklessness manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life.
Okay, now read the definition of killing, because he did ask for both.
I just asked for murder because I felt like it was going to validate my opinion, but keep going.
Killing. The act or action of causing death as of a person. Or a sudden large profit.
So, I'll take the second one. Can we find a way to turn this podcast into a killing?
Where are you reading your definitions from? I'm just curious.
I'm just Googling them. Or, well, no.
Because the definition that came up on here is different.
Okay,
this is not
what the heck?
Google.
Let's go to definition.
What definition you got there?
Murder, the unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another. So it specifies unlawful.
Okay, so I don't like that definition because it specifies unlawful.
So it doesn't count.
So, yeah, in my mind, so that definition doesn't count. I like the one that Rob read. It's premeditated, which I feel like certain killings can be premeditated because maybe you're protecting somebody. But you're doing it with malice, with bad intentions. When it comes to murder, you're doing it with disregard for human life. You're not caring about if that person lives. In fact, you're hoping they don't. There's a reason that's called attempted murder when you're like trying to kill somebody because you don't like them or they did something against you. So to start the conversation of how did you ask the question particularly again?
Is murder always wrong?
The word murder is always wrong. So murdering is always wrong, in my opinion. By that definition, I don't know how else you could say that it is right. Because most of the time, let's talk about killing and murdering. I feel like that's where this podcast kind of has to go, at least to start.
Sure.
So let's talk in a grand scheme of things in a war or in a conquest of sorts. If you're fighting against a greater evil, let's use the example everybody uses, Hitler.
Yep.
You're going to fight against Hitler's army. You're killing them because you believe that what they're doing is wrong. Now, Hitler's army is killing, I believe, in a lot of their minds, killing the other armies that are attacking them because they believe, most of them probably believe that they were fighting for the right cause to support Germany, all that kind of stuff. But what they did to innocent people in concentration camps, or what conquestors, I don't know if that's a word, do when they took over new colonies and new countries back in the day to people that were native there, just because they were in their way, or in concentration camps just because they thought that a certain race or group of people were less than them or evil, and they had no regard for their human lives. That's murdering.
Okay, so let's just we've thrown out some definitions for the sake of the podcast. Zeke, why don't you tell me the difference between murder and killing in your head? So we'll use that as the basis for the conversation moving forward.
Murdering, you're doing it because you have malice towards someone or no respect for or no value of who they are.
Okay.
Because I think, to go back to the Hitler example, maybe he didn't have malice toward certain groups that he was killing, but he had no respect for them because he thought his way and who was...
He definitely had malice. Let's not mince words here.
What I'm saying is, like, he might have not... So, I'm trying to think of the way to explain this. He had malice toward Jewish people because he thought they were evil or whatever, and obviously that wasn't true, and he had malice toward them. There were other groups of people that he thought were less than him that I don't know if I consider maybe malice. I'm thinking malice like hatred toward them. Maybe he didn't have hatred toward them, but he killed them because he was like, y'all are less than me, you don't deserve life.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to explain.
I think
I'm saying both were wrong. Obviously, he murdered them. But I think so you have murder in those two aspects. You murder them because you think you're better than them and you don't care about their lives, or you hate them or have something against them, so you murder them.
Okay.
And then killing it could be as easy as accidental.
Sure.
You could be out hunting somebody. Never mind. You could be out hunting deer, hunting turkeys, hunting ducks, whatever game that you're trying to shoot. And you turn to the left because you see a deer, you fire, someone walks in front of you, you killed them. You didn't mean to, or you're defending yourself. Rob is trying to murder me or hurt someone I care about.
Every day.
Yeah. And I have a gun or a knife or whatever, and I kill Rob. But I didn't really murder Rob because I didn't have any malice toward Rob. I was not hating Rob. I was protecting either myself or someone I love. So there's obviously a difference in the motivation between murder and killing. Sometimes in killing there's no motivation whatsoever. But there are murders where I feel like there's no intention either, but instead I think there was a part of that definition where they said there was no respect for human life, or where you go do something stupid like get in a car intoxicated, you kill somebody, it's considered manslaughter by law, but I would say that's a murder because you didn't have the respect for human life when you made that decision to possibly put yourself in a deadly situation.
Okay. That definition makes sense. So, you think that murder is always wrong?
Yeah, because I think by definition, it is either with lack of respect for human life or with malice and bad intentions.
Okay, so here's an example. Somebody comes to your house and threatens the life, like not just threatens verbally, but like actually is threatening the life of Sarah, right? You manage to fight them off. They leave.
Yes.
Right. You, a different version of you, says that person, something needs to happen to them, right?
This is a different version of me because I would not go to this extent, but I understand what you're saying. Go
right.
ahead.
So later, you go to them and you shoot them.
Yes.
Right. You kill them.
Yeah.
Right. Is that murder?
Yes.
Okay.
So, because if I murdered them in the initial act of them threatening my wife, if I killed them in the initial act of them threatening my wife, my intent was to protect Sarah. My intent was not to kill them. It was to protect my wife, myself, whatever. If then I fight them off, they leave. They run away. They realize they can't kill me or Sarah at that point. I chase them down and shoot them. To me, that my intent changes. I am no longer trying to protect. I am now trying to hurt somebody else. At that point, a person that doesn't have that intent would then get a hold of somebody that can do something to that person, short of killing them, to bring them into jail, to put them away for attempted murder, for attempted harm. And that's probably what I would do in my... When you said a different version of me, is because that's what I would do. If I was able to fight them off without ending their life, then I would say, hey, call 911. Obviously, I would be shaken. My wife probably would be shaken too, obviously. But that person didn't follow through on their act. I have no reason to go follow through on their act because this comes into like who I am as a person, what I believe, especially part of my faith. You never know who that person will be later on in their life. So there's no reason to go end it now unless the only way I could protect the people I care about was to end it now.
Okay, so what about another example? Cain Velasquez, right?
Yes.
He was booked for attempted murder, and that was he found out that somebody, I guess he knew, was molesting his nieces or something like that. And then he shot the guy, and he was booked for attempted murder. So if he killed the guy, would that have been murder?
So we go back to the same example. From what I remember from the story, I could be misremembering.
Yeah.
He caught the person in the act and then tried to kill them because they were in the act of doing that. I don't think the person got very far away from the act of it, of the molesting of unfortunate, like this is like a heavy topic conversation. So in that aspect, I think he is still protecting his niece. If he shot that person, which he did, and then they got away, and then he went out and shot him a couple hours later, a day later. Maybe if he's just like running out the front door and you happen to shoot them, like that's not murder. But like if you have enough time to like think, and then you still go about and do it, do I understand his motivation? Caring especially about an innocent child. There's things that happen to innocent children all over this world that I would completely understand if people started killing people with human trafficking and all that kind of stuff. But that is in fact murder, and then you just ended the person's life, and you don't know where it would go down the line. So, but in Cain Velasquez's aspect, if I remember the story correctly, I could be misremembering. I think he shot them in the house, either during or right after the act of him catching them in the act. So I don't think that's attempted murder. If I misremember the story, I could be wrong. But if I'm remembering correctly, then no, I don't think it's attempted murder because he was protecting his niece.
Okay, I got one more if that's cool.
Yeah.
So in 2011, U.S. Navy SEALs shot and killed Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
Is that murder?
That is a great question. Because that is a vast, from what we know, evil human being that caused deaths of many, many people.
Yeah.
In that aspect of a military action, obviously there was forethought. obviously there was intent and was malice intent to kill him. He might be an example where the only way you stop him from doing what he does is to kill him. Because how else would you stop someone that has military support behind them? Because if you capture them, say they, instead of killing him, they captured Osama bin Laden, how else would they have gotten him out of there? Or not been able, like, I don't think you go capture Osama bin Laden, take his butt out, and are able to put him into a prison or wherever you take him. I don't think that's possible. But I could be wrong.
But is it murder? Like that? Like that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't disagree with you.
So in my faith and my ideals, yes, I would think it's murder because you don't know who that person is going to become later on in their life.
So do you think that was wrong?
In my ideal world where this isn't, we live in a world that is full of contradictions and hopelessness and sin. It's been that way since. I'm not saying like the world's hopeless now. The world has always had hopelessness in it, and it also has hope in it for multiple reasons. In my ideal world, yes, it's wrong.
Like you in your ideal world, like there would have been another way to resolve.
You take him into custody, you put him in jail, you hope that eventually he changes who he is. You hope that some divine force is able to come and change who that person is.
So interesting. So in that case, you don't think that you think that killing was wrong?
In my ideals, yes.
Okay.
But I can understand in this world, like, there's left no option at certain points.
So do you think it was wrong? Like that's what I'm trying to get at.
I think the human race is wrong in a lot of instances that are looked as allowed or necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's wrong. Do I understand why it had to happen in the world that we live in? Yes, completely and totally. And if I have so many opinions on stuff that has to do with Osama bin Laden and the war that we went into because of him,
sure,
that we would be here for another 3 hours. Because of the pain he caused so many people and so many families, I can completely understand if you tell me that I'm wrong. If you had a son or daughter that went over to that war and passed away because of it, or you had a family 9/11, I can understand why you say I'm wrong, 100%. But in my ideal world of my faith of people should be locked away if they're terrible people, but they possibly could change in that process before they die, yes, killing any person on purpose is wrong.
Okay. Well, because that's, I don't know if you have anything else, Paul. Like, that was for me, like, that's where the line is kind of for me when it comes to murder, where it's like, that, like, some people would say it's wrong, but it's justified. Like,
yes, understand.
Like, I kind of waffle back and forth on this topic myself because it's like, I would like to think that as humans, the thing we can at least give every human is like, you might be able to someday possibly become a better version of yourself. Mm-hmm. But also, like, when you do all of the awfulness that someone like Osama bin Laden did, it's like, well, how many chances do you get?
Understand. Yeah. And that's why, ideally, the chance he has is by himself in a far locked away place where he can't affect the world anymore. Because in my mind, you capture him or you kill him, I don't think it affects the way the people that supported him will then react from it. I think if you kill Osama bin Laden, the people that supported him are still going to react the same way.
Mm-hmm.
If you capture Osama bin Laden, the people that supported him are going to still react the same way.
Yeah.
So that's where my thoughts go.
But yeah,
like I said, in my ideal world, this is what you do. You're able to contain somebody that is that atrocious, or any murder, or any. We were talking about Cain Velasquez. I'm not going to wager which one's worse, which one's not worse.
It's all awful.
It's all awful. But how innocent that person was that Cain Velasquez niece compared to people that Osama bin Laden because he had a certain set of beliefs we're going after. Like, really, they're both incredibly awful. So part of me can understand Cain Velasquez's anger more than anger toward bin Laden because he was raised in a certain way and has all these beliefs. But either way, they're both awful. So both ones I can completely understand why you say, like, if you went and killed that person, whoever Cain Velasquez tried to kill, later on in the day, I understand it. I completely validate it. Like, you're thinking and understanding. If you wanted to go kill Osama bin Laden after what happened, in 9/11 and wars that followed. Completely understand it. I understand where you're coming from. This is the opposite of the last conversation we had, not to make light of this conversation. I got where people are coming from, but I couldn't understand it. This one, I understand where people are coming from. It's just not in my faith and who I am.
Yeah, so there, like for you, there is no gray area on this topic. Like you can understand why people would find it justified, but like for you, like if you could have it your way,
I mean, this is maybe my idealistic faith that I have in who I am or what I believe, but I completely understand why people would not feel this way, and I completely respect them. It's a complete respect thing. So sometimes I'll have differing opinions from people on serious topics like this, and I won't respect their opinion at all because I know that's one of the things that's like in a situation where I know I'm right. This is a situation where I respect where you're coming from because I can understand it. That's just not how I feel.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard for me to make a golden rule on this because I respect the other side of the opinion on certain aspects.
Well, you are going to have to.
I know I'm going to have to. But I'm just like prefacing, since this is such a serious topic, this one is going to be hard for me to say a golden rule to because I respect someone like Cain Velasquez or the men that went in that secret operation and assassinated Osama bin Laden. Like I respect them both very much and understand why they did what they did and understand it. It's just in my faith and hope, that's just not where I am.
To put a different spin on this conversation, do you think that the death penalty is murder?
Yeah, because I think it's the same thing as we just talked about with Osama bin Laden. Like, I would hope that that person who did terrible, terrible things could somehow change. Some people can't, and some people don't. But the thing about it is you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not God. You don't know. Even if you don't believe in God, I'm using God as an example of like in any existence, if you're atheist, Buddhist, Christian, whatever, the only being in any of those existences that knows the future is God. So if you're not God, how do you know if that person is going to change?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you could know. So in that aspect, I think it is murder. There have been people that have been put to death that have changed in their lives once they were locked up, but they already had the death penalty, so it didn't matter. Like they were already done. There are some that had the death penalty that never changed. There's some that were in prison for the rest of their life, 60, 70 years, and they never changed. But you don't know who that one person is that's going to change and how much that could impact their life and how much it could impact other people by seeing that change. So I think it is murder. And this is another aspect of people I respect. If the person that is on death row that had the death penalty hurt you and your family, I completely respect the fact that you needed that closure and you needed it. In my ideal world, forgiveness would be the number one aspect of a lot of people's personalities, and you would hope for the best. I just had this conversation on the way in with somebody about Hey Arnold, which is like way off the serious topic. I'm trying to bring it down a little bit because it's like the weight of this conversation is a lot. But like Hey Arnold always looked for the best in people. Every freaking episode of that show. Even when they were hopeless, he looked at the best of them. When Eugene would crash his 17th bike, he would push on and say, we can do this. We can figure this out. When people were outcasts, he would always be like, I need to figure out why they're outcasts and prove to everybody else that they're wrong. And I feel like that's a great example of what I'm trying to explain. Like, I understand why these people are terrible people, and they're awful. But the problem is every single person in the world, in my opinion and faith, to an extent, is not a good person. Like, there's something about you that you do wrong in your life. You just haven't done anything in our human minds that is to that extent. And you've changed maybe in your life, and don't do the things that were awful when you were younger. Maybe you were just hooked on drugs, which is something that sucks for yourself, and it's something that is an addiction that you can't help, but you changed. So why can't this person who made maybe one bad decision in their life, or a lot of bad decisions, change? Because it's possible. Like I said before, it might not happen. It might never happen. But it's possible. And I always believe that you have to give everybody that possibility. And like I said, it's locked up maybe by themselves, and you never know what'll change, and it might not change, but it's possible. I don't want them out near people because I don't want to be like sitting next to them and hoping that today's the day they change, because I don't want to be like their next victim. Or I don't want Osama bin Laden to be like out and around and like hanging out with people and be like, you know what, we need to do another big attack. But if he's by himself, can't affect anybody else in the world, and then that change happens, the amount of significant difference that change could happen in a person like that could have on so many people, to me, that's why murder is just always, in my opinion, always wrong.
So there's no scenario. There are 0 scenarios in your head where you get to say, you don't get to play anymore. Sorry.
I mean, I feel like we've went over some pretty extreme scenarios. It just always comes back to the change thing. Like, I understand humans are not the greatest people, and there are great things about humans, but there also are bad things about humans. And some people never change who they are, and they think what they're doing is right, especially people with strong beliefs in Adolf Hitler, his asinine beliefs, his crazy beliefs, an extreme terrorist who had beliefs that what they're doing is right, or even settlers that came to the United States and was like, this is our destiny, this is what we believe, so we're just going to murder all the Native Americans that are here. Like, people have these beliefs, and this is like, I guess, the idealist in myself. Even those people can sometimes change. It's possible. So that's why it's like, to me, it's always possible.
I think it's commendable, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people like will justify murder in particular cases, and maybe that's right, but like I think it's commendable that you, like, of all the topics we've had so far, you're very staunchly like, no, this is where I'm at, and like that's cool.
Like I said, it's just who I am, as like the background of my faith, of where mine comes from, and to go into the golden rule, it's even more than just like treat other people how you want to be treated. It's love people no matter what, because I loved you. So that's what you're supposed to do. You don't murder someone if you love them. Now, do you hold them accountable? Yes. If a child does something that's wrong and they're your child, you love them by holding them accountable. So you still have to hold people accountable for what they did wrong.
Absolutely.
But if you end it, they have no chance. 0 chance. So what's the point? Will you have to take care of them for the rest of their lives in jail? Yeah. But you never know where it could go. That's just, so like, to me, it's just, there's no way in my world you can't continue to love somebody and hope that something happens where they change. That some sort of divine intervention of God or whatever you believe happens, that they change. It might, most of the cases, it probably won't happen. I mean, at least like 80-90%, but you don't know what that one change could do.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we've got
that's my ruling, and in my ideal world, all murder is wrong. Doesn't matter what the case is. So I think we already explained the golden rule during this podcast, that you love people no matter what, even if they do something as extreme as we've talked about. But again, that doesn't mean you hold them accountable. I'm not even going to say about the whole thing about always being right part for this episode, because it's way too heavy to say that. But yeah, that's the Golden Rule Podcast, episode number 5.
Thanks for listening to the show. Hosted by Zeke Sprague, anchored by Rob Yates and Paul Barnett. Produced by Paul for Razorpig Productions. If you like it, be sure to subscribe and leave a positive rating. If you don't, thanks for listening all the way through anyway. Have a good one.